Yeah, I see music.
Excellent. What can we see with C music?
Oh, we can see visuals.
Nice.
The keys dance.
That's what we were talking about. I like that a lot. Got a little bit of setup over here too. I went ahead and went with Meticulous. So this would be this is a setup where you won't be able to hear it right now until I change it. But as far as the visuals go, we can get it to where we can actually see what chords we're hitting and what key we're in, things like that. So that'll be good for conversations musically in order to go back and forth on keyboard here.
Oh, and I
So
think Meticulous works great for tutorials, music training. That's the original one that I played with because I like being able to see the staff. You can change it to guitar notation.
exactly. Yeah, it's very flexible, and we'll be able to hear it. All I need to do is just share the that particular app or share the screen that has the app on it, and we'll be able to get the sound from that. But for now, we can both see and hear your C music this way, which
Yeah,
is
and
cool.
you got to share the love.
Ah, exactly, exactly. Now, what was a chord progression? An example of a chord progression that we were talking about before, like something we were dealing with more or less just white notes, but we were debating about something that was either going to be major or minor, and you can see it both ways depending on what we were trying to look at and what we're trying to do. It sounds very different depending on how we looked at it there for sure.
And what
But
key? Like,
exactly,
the two variations is the difference between being in C major or being in a modal shift. We were doing
exactly,
C, B, A,
very
and
nice.
that's the minor version. The major
Hmm.
version,
Very different resolution.
yeah.
I like them both though. I mean, they both have their place.
Oh yeah, I could see writing one type of song with the minor and a totally different type of song with the major.
Yeah, or
More
even two
likely
parts of the same
pop.
song, where it's just shifting or modulating from one section to another. But you get a totally different feel out of the two different sections. But you wouldn't have to do it that way. I mean, it would be easier to keep a song all together in the same tonal center, where this would be more moving outside that, because you got that, a C in one and a C sharp in the other. That definitely stands out. But it's one of those things that you can do.
Yeah, and I would probably pick which one I went with based on what I want to do after those three
Exactly.
chords.
Where you want to go with it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, what kind of mood I want the song to actually have.
Hmm. Now we do have a few things that we're going to do tonight. We're going to be playing some piano back and forth here. We also have some videos to watch, so we can pick and choose what we want to do. I kind of mixed it all around tonight as far as the videos go. Most of them are kind of shorter, and I think there's two on specifically keyboard. Two of them are more guitar stuff, and one or two are more of a songwriting type of thing. So spreading it around a little bit. Plus, we could sit here and play with the keys all night if we want to, because we can actually see what we're going, see what we're doing over here back and forth, as long as we're not going too crazy.
Yeah, I love being able to see the notes.
Mm-hmm.
Helps me
Exactly.
to figure out what to play to somebody
Mm-hmm.
if I can see that stuff.
Yeah.
Even the staff helps.
Mm-hmm. Now, if I were to do this, the question is, if I just share Meticulous itself, the question is how it looks. Does it take over the whole screen, or is it just essentially sharing the sound from the Meticulous and keeping the screen as it was? So let's see what that looks like. And then,
Mm. You can hear the piano.
yeah, I think it takes over the whole screen. It was just testing it to see if it was. But this would be the whole layout then for the Meticulous application, where it shows you the different things you can select, and it shows you the whole keyboard at the bottom. It shows you how you can choose different things to modulate. But it's a good way to be able to
Oh,
go
you
back and
with
forth.
those sevens. You're so fancy.
To me, it was one of those things where if you start with that octave, or if you just do you start with that C, and then if you just start gently walking down, you come down that one semitone. That's the major seven. Come down one more. That's the minor seven,
Yeah, see, now I like that seventh.
and this would be a dominant chord because you've got the major third and the minor seven. Then if you bring the third down, That's the minor 7. So it's the minor 3rd and the minor 7.
Ooh, that one's got a nice ring too.
And if you came down again
So
on the top.
so you slid the E and the B.
Well, at first I just came down with just the pinky from the C to the B. But for that particular one, yeah. We went
I like
to
that one.
the flat 7 and the minor 3rd. But you can also do it with the major 3rd.
That one really does have a nice ring.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that's by just doing the little step down there. Let me do this here. By stopping the share, because yeah, I'm not a fan of the share taking over the whole screen like that. So this way we can actually, this way we can at least, you know, see what's going on here, whether it's that way or whether it is this way. This way also works and keeps things. We have both of those cameras in effect over here, so we can make that work. And yeah, this way though you can see what I'm hitting, but you won't be able to hear what I'm hitting. And actually, you don't even see it with that one. Okay.
I'll try to play what you're hitting if I could see it.
Yeah, there you go. From there, you'd be able to see it. Exactly. So, for example, if we were just looking at a 1-4-5 in the key of C, we'd be looking at C and F and G. And this is one of the things we talked about earlier with slash chords, where, and then back to the C. So it's just doing the.
That's several songs I can think of right now.
Oh yeah, and that progression is very common. You can strum it all kinds of ways, and it'll sound like, you know, different songs depending on how you strum it, how you break it up, how the pattern you do against it. And you can also change how it feels based on if you play it in root position each time, where you're starting from that C as the lowest note, and then F is the lowest note, and then G is the lowest note. By doing it that way, it sounds like it's moving up and then comes back.
Oh wow, it sounds totally different when you go in the opposite direction. I mean,
Yep.
it doesn't have that build up like this way. When you go down, it's more like, which is a progression I play all the time.
Yep. And you can
Very
split them too,
different.
where you go down with one and up with the other one, or up with one and down with the other one.
Oh, I'm actually doing first inversion to the F, first inversion to the G. Yeah, all the way across. Bringing the G up, instead of getting resolution, you feel like you want to be pushed to the next chord.
Transported, yeah.
Very different resolution.
Mm-hmm. So sometimes, like, I would change the which inversion I use to try to keep the chords in one position, like to try to keep everything close together. Other times you change it because you want the motion of that melody line, whether it's the melody line or whether it's the bass note. That is gives that motion, sense of movement, whether you want it to move up or move down or go contrary to the melody or with it. All of those other songwriting choices as you build a song together with those parts.
A C really starts off differently depending on the inversion. Like this is the root. This is the first inversion, and this is the third inversion. That inversion almost feels like a resolution chord more than a starting chord. It feels like something I end on.
Yeah, and if you play that one that has the G in the bottom, that C chord with the G in the bottom, and then play a G chord right before it with a G in the bottom, you see that those are sort of right. You're only moving those two notes. You leave that G in the same place, and you're just moving the B and the D to the C and the E. Or the other way, depending on which way you're going.
Going that way, like starting with a C this way in first inversion, and then going to a G and you know, a triad really shifts nice. I mean, that's like dozens and dozens of hit songs.
Oh yeah.
That's the C to G to F.
Yep. And then if you go from that C to the G to the F to an A minor,
which I do all the time.
and then back to the C, yeah.
when I want to change up the mood, going to the A minor with that progression is my go-to.
Yeah.
It just throws you off.
And you can change those all around. Also, like a lot of times you'd want to go with the 1 at the beginning and have the 5 at the end, but using the 4 and the 6 in the middle. So like a 1, 6, 4, 5, for example.
Oh, that's Since You've Been Gone.
That's like 1,000 songs also. Yep. Yep. Nice. Yep.
Yeah, Since You've Been Gone.
Exactly. And whether it's transposed in another key doesn't really matter. It's the feeling and the way that the rhythm comes across, and that's why it's identifiable to you. Like you can, as soon as you play, it's like, oh yeah, that one, and then you could also play like 5 other songs. Oh yeah, that one, because they all sound exactly like that.
Those are fail-safe chord combinations, no matter what key. I mean, with C, it's just so obvious, but. You can't fail with that.
Yep. That sounds great.
1, 5, 6, 4.
A lot of times I would do it the other way. Like I like the last one to be a 5, just because the 5 resolves really nice to the 1.
Oh.
So a lot of times it's a 1, 6, 4, 5 or a 1, 4, 6, 5. I think it's usually the 1, 6, 4, 5. Would be my guess.
1, 6, 4, 5.
And then it comes back to the 1 again. So when it's coming around.
Oh, that's totally like the old school, like rock. Yeah, that's that 50s rock and roll.
I was going to say, I could start doing some doo-wop to that. Absolutely. But that's one of the one of the fail safes. Like we said, 1, 4, 5 is always good. Another one that you'll see is a say 2, 6, 1, 5. So going from a D minor,
starting with a 2, huh?
Yeah. So starting with a D minor and then to the A minor.
Now where?
And then the 1 C and then the 5 G.
Okay. To the G.
And then back to the D again, D minor.
Totally.
And even just throwing those 4 chords in different combinations, but just using those 4, the fact that they're in that same distance from each other, like the 1 and the 5 are the same distance apart as the 2 and the 6, and the 1 and the 5 are both.
Starting with the 2 always throws me off a little bit, but it's so interesting. It makes you go in a different direction. Yeah, see, that starting with that too really makes me think in a totally different song approach.
Yep. And that's one of those ways where, again, the 1, the 4, and the 5 are the major ones that you're going to be working with. The 2, the 3, and the 6 will be the minor ones that you're going to work with. The 7 we kind of set aside because we're not really dealing with it diminished at this point in time. But just dealing with those combinations of the 1, 4, 5, and the 2, 3, and 6, and using them together and using them in contrast to each other, and seeing where they fit together. What I like is the fact that the 1, 4, 5, the distance that you're going to get from the 1 to the 4 and the 5, is the same for the 6 to the 2 to the 3. So it's just starting on the 6 to go to the 2 to the 3 is that same jump.
Ah, that's the way to think of it. 6 to 2 to 3. Yes, that feels much more natural.
And that would be the minor side of the equation. And whichever one of those that you want to keep the home key in, whether you're keeping the home key in minor as the 6, considering that the 1, or whether you're keeping it in the major key, keeping the 1 as the 1, you just kind of work with the numbers from there. Is the way I kind of look at it. It does get a little weird with the minor stuff, because the minor, since the 1, if you're playing an A minor, and that's the center, the tonal center of the song, then the 1 is the A minor. So then your 4 and your 5 would be your D minor and your E minor. And so you're dealing
Yeah,
with those.
in that kind of progression, if you start on minor instead of major, versus
Those are like the groups that are happy together. Like, these 3 stay together and these 3 stay together, but mixing and matching is where all the magic comes from, so you can have
Well,
a progression where
I
you've got
like
3 major chords and a minor chord, or 3 minors and a major, or half and half.
I like the 1-4-5, preferably more on the major side, like the way it feels.
Yeah.
Versus
They have the
if
same
I was gonna
relative
do it
distances,
minor,
but yeah,
I'd be like
it's the way they
thinking
feel.
like marching band orchestra or something. Whereas in major, very easy to put into like a rock song or something.
Absolutely. And that's where, like you were saying before, the left hand, the activity of the bass line really dictates a lot of the style. If you've got like a really bouncy left hand, doing something down there, it can sound a lot more active. If you have something where it's just holding notes down, it can sound more powerful or dramatic. If you have it
I don't
just
really
barely
have a
hitting
bouncy
anything,
hand. Neither of my
if you're
hands
just
are bouncy.
even if you're just playing little bits down there, like the fact that they're spread out, the fact that those low notes can be so low, and like if you hit 2 of them, like you hit an octave down low and then hit whatever chord you were going to hit up high, you get
That's
a really
what I
nice,
do
powerful
all
spread.
the time. Like my left hand is all about the octave.
Yep. And it just fills out that chord nicely, like a big guitar chord. Nice.
My left hand's so lazy that other than doing octaves, I've been trying to get my left hand doing more bass lines based on like the way you've been showing me to approach bass from a keyboard perspective.
Nice.
Get some, get some movement going with the left hand. My brain just gets frazzled when I try to do something complicated with the left hand and I'm trying to bounce with the right.
Yeah.
I
That's the thing, is trying to do
really
too much.
focus on both hands at the same time.
Yeah, trying to do too much activity at once can be a little bit overwhelming, and that's why I try to break those things into 2 hands separately and just try to focus on one, the one that's less active, ideally, like of the 2 parts, which is usually the left hand. But just focus on that, get it to where it's feeling pretty automatic, and then try to put that on. And even if I have to slow things down in my head and just like slow everything down, slow the whole part down, and then just play the left hand, and then mix in the bits of the right hand, even if it's just hitting like the chord changes at first, just to hit like milestones or goalposts, like get to where, okay, I get the hand in the right position for this chord at this time, and then this one for that one, and then
play the
even
part
if
a
I'm going to
couple of
change
times seamlessly.
Yep, and then get to the point where I can get to those positions, because the positions thing is kind of a leftover or a guitar thing, essentially, because once you get that guitar chord position, you can very easily solo from that position, because you're all right there. Like all the notes that you need are all right where you can find them easily, and that's where the cage stuff helps out with knowing where everything is, and being able to like say, okay, if I'm in this spot on the neck and I want to play this chord, I can play it in this shape, and then I have access to like these particular notes very easily, and then I can switch to this shape on this part of the neck and play these notes and change.
Can
to
you
that.
play the Peanuts song? Because to me, that's the ultimate challenge for both my hands.
It's like a G, A, and B in the left.
Yeah, I think it's is it G or E?
This is the way I hear it as G, but it could be I could be hearing it in the wrong key. For some reason, it's always in G when I'm playing on the bass. That is what it feels like. Yeah, G, D, G.
D, G, D, G, G. Ah, yes, you're right. Which I can do slowly, but there's no way I can get my right hand to do the other part. I always felt like if I could master that song, I would get past my whole left-right hand situation because it's
The very easy start for the right
challenge.
hand there is the G, A, B is the way that starts. While you're doing that, or now that we've got that, we kind of put that aside. Then we think about the right hand, and we think we're going to do a higher G, A, B, like G, A, B, B, A, G, A, G. So we're going up and then back down again.
Oh,
Yep. Just like that.
yeah.
Yeah, yep.
Which
And then
I can
another,
do
like you
by
said,
itself, but when I'm
right.
trying to do this. And what's the second half of that?
Then it gets, I believe it modulates.
Yeah, I think it goes down to the F.
The F or the F sharp. Could be.
Something like that. And then
Nice. That is one of the first things that I used to sit down and play if I sat down at a piano. I would just feel that on the left hand, just get that little bounce going.
well, it's like there's
Yep.
just your go-tos. Like
The
the
go-to
first time
pieces.
you hit a piano. I'm trying to teach Wesley. Like,
Nice. Yeah.
I think he's gonna get it by the time he's 4.
Yeah, nice. Very cool. For me, it was, what was the other one I used to play a lot? The Fearless was one of the ones that I would play whenever I would sit down, just because that one,
Which I used to know it
Nice.
all.
Yeah,
I
me too.
really need to practice my classical again. But that was
Exactly.
one of the first ones. The very first one was
Nice.
yeah. Where's it go? I used to know this one too. It was the first song I ever learned, Moonlight Sonata.
Nice.
The
That's
reason why I
diving
wanted
right
to
into the
play
deep end,
piano.
huh?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of easier songs to start with than that.
Actually, it's a great one to start with piano. I think that was perfect for me. Chopin or
Yeah,
Verdi. These are the ones that I hope someday to understand.
Yeah, Chopin are the ones that I got. I had so much exposure to them when I was super young, so that they're all ingrained. Like anytime I hear, whether it's Chopin list, there's a number of different ones that I just, when I hear the song, I would not be able to name the song or tell you why I know it, but I know it, I feel it because it was played around the house when I was a toddler, and like my entire life, like my dad has been playing those songs throughout the house. So they were his favorite was the Preludes. Chopin's Preludes were his
Yes.
favorites. So the Prelude in A major and C minor were the two that I would play. Like the one that I played for you that day was the C minor one. That one starts out with that, like with that chord where you're hitting, like all these over here as well as those down there and hitting
And
big chords like that.
Preludes are my favorite of the different types of pieces that you can write. Like I always feel like I'm writing intros, and preludes are these nice compact parts that lead into bigger parts.
Yep. They do what their name kind of suggests. Like they prelude,
Yeah.
they lead to something else, which is cool.
They tend
And,
to become my intros into bigger songs.
Yep. And that's where you end up with like more than 3-minute songs, right? Like you're like 9-minute, 12-minute,
Hey,
15-minute songs.
Cracker just made like a 14-minute masterpiece.
Oh wow, yeah. There
I
you
mean,
go.
if you're
Stretching the
you're-
bounds of time.
if you're gonna go use that full 15 minutes in BandLab, you're gonna need to take some kind of traditional songwriting approach. In the old days, 15-minute symphony was the norm. Like it was done in parts, and yeah, those parts sound different. Those parts go in different directions, but they come back to resolve in a theme on
Exactly.
the end.
Yep. And that's the thread that ties it all together. Is that's the key, is to have that thread, because some people, they'll do something that's prelude-ish and then something after it that's not prelude-ish, and they'll just tie them together and say, see, there it is. But
Yeah,
it's, the point is for that theme to carry through, or at least some aspect of the theme to carry through from the beginning to the end,
yeah. And back
generally
then,
speaking.
a lot of these guys were writing it back then to fill like a 15, 30 minute gap at church on Sunday. You know,
Mm-hmm.
Bach, everything he was writing for years was for Sunday
Mm-hmm.
because that's where they would perform these things.
Yep. You go where the work is, right?
Hmm? Otherwise, you'd be writing operas, and you know, like Mozart would be writing for 2 hour gaps.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Now, how about we talked about Nare Soul before, the
Oh yeah,
keyboardist. She was the one who had the ones for music as digested by a classical musician,
she's
and
the
in this
one who
case it was.
analyzes based on emotion, right?
Yep,
She's the
yep.
one who talked about like how emotion in music, variation, the same chords can be done emotionally different. I
Yep.
truly believe that too.
Yeah, yeah. And the other thing was about the way that her classical training prepared her for what she's, and then as she starts to, again, she calls it how she digests these other genres, to see what elements are like critical to that style, and then try to go from there. This is going to be a
And
black screen to start here, but
digest is a good description for that. That's what
yeah.
I feel like when I'm listening to different emotional moods. Is like I'm digesting the sound,
Hmm.
getting it to process through my ears.
Exactly. Now let me see if I can get the video started for us here. Just let me know if the sound is good still.
Hello everyone, my name is Nari Sol and I'm a pianist composer coming from the classical music world. Since recently I've been trying to explore a bunch of different genres beyond what I'm familiar with, and this week I decided to focus on the blues, especially the 12-bar progression that stems from the genre. So I've been introduced to the blues form on several occasions in the past few years, but I never really sat down and tried to apply it in any way. Okay, so I don't have my umbrella, as always. Here are some things I learned, if not reinforced my knowledge on. The following is the basic 12-bar blues progression. In the case of the major blues form, the 1 and 4 chords are usually dominant 7th chords, and for the minor blues form, minor 7th chords. There are many altered blues forms stemming from this basic
That's why
model,
you
and
guitars like
variations
those
of this
sevens.
progression exist as a standard form across many types of genres, including jazz, rock, country, pop, etc.
I packed my old suitcase, told my family goodbye.
Being a media composer, film composer, you have to.
Two of the most common blues scales are the minor blues scale and the major blues scale. These are both pentatonic scales with an added blue note. I also learned a lot from transcribing parts of one of Oscar Peterson's performances of Sea Jam Blues. This was really helpful for me in understanding subtle mannerisms in his playing that you really can't get just by looking at a written out transcription. Alright, so it's been a couple of days since I started this transcription. I have been writing it all out. I'm almost done, and I'm working on the left hand. It's really hard for me to hear because I'm new to this language, but it's been fun, and it's been especially fun trying to listen to all of the places where Oscar Peterson really makes an accent, and I've been marking those as well. Something like this. Let me see. If I were to look at it normally speaking, I would just play it with these fingers, and then because my fourth finger is here, I would just use it. But because of the accenting, I find it much more practical to repeat the finger. So repeat the third finger. It's much easier to make that separation and also the accent. So I feel slightly strange walking into a mall with a keyboard, but... And of course, in line with the tradition of these soundbake videos, I wrote a pocket piece. The chords I used were C7 for 4 bars, F7 for 2, C7 for 2, an A flat major 7th chord, a C minor over B flat, and a C7 for 2 bars. Just for fun, I also tried playing a version with a little more of a swing feel to it. By the way, thank you so much to everyone who responded to my posts both on YouTube and Instagram about finding tunes to add to my playlist. Don't feel like shocking.
She is really awesome.
Oh, there it is. Had to get to my mute button there. Absolutely. Yeah, she kicks butt. Very good on the keys. And just an awesome person. Yeah.
Well, a
That's-
scholar, a scholar of music construction. She's
Yeah.
analyzing music at multiple levels, emotionally, mathematically,
Absolutely.
and she's not just a keyboardist, right? Like, I think I've
mean,
seen her like playing
does-
other instruments.
I haven't checked out much of that, but just as far as the way she composes or the way that she digests and breaks things down, she's definitely aware of the other parts, whether she's big on doing them or not. She's definitely aware of getting them done there, which is very cool.
Yeah,
the
that's
way that she gets that all done.
Nari Soul
Nare Soul,
on
yep.
YouTube.
Nahre, first name.
Ah,
and
NAH.
SOL.
That's
Yeah.
why.
Yep. Exactly. And just again, she's got some fantastic stuff. Whether it's most of it is things similar like that one, where it was this was blues as digested by a classical musician. She also did bebop that way. Trying to think of the other styles. She basically broke down several of them and dissected them, and then at the end came up with an original piece in the style to kind of demonstrate the grasp of the material, which is a great way to digest and break things down and really dive into what takes it. It's a very simple form, especially with the blues. It's a very simple form, but she got those two different pieces with very different feels out of basically the same idea, which was also very cool. Like just looking at different approaches to get the same things done.
I saw how, like, starting with that seventh on your starting chords, how it lends itself to like a blues feel. I see why some of you guitarists that are bluesy use those sevenths all the time right off the bat.
Yeah, sevenths are great for the polyphony, just getting different options for chords. It really clearly defines where you're going with the chords, and if you're for the jazz context as well. I mean, they were pretty much all at least 4-note chords at that point, or at least using all three, or basically taking the 1, 3, and 5 for granted, and then everything else after that is what they start messing around with to get the different strange sounds going.
Jazz is one of them genres where like every chord is full, 4-note chords, the whole song.
Now, one of the things about bass chords, about playing a chord on the bass, is that if you try to play the root, like if you were to play just a guitar chord on a bass, because you can do that, the fattest 4 strings on a guitar are the same as the 4 strings on a 4-string bass. So you can translate what you know as a chord on a guitar onto a bass as far as those notes go, and that's good for hand positioning to know where you are. But if you tried to play that chord that way, and you're playing a root on the fat string, and then a fifth on the next string, another root on the next string, and then a third on that 4th string, if you play that whole thing, it's going to be mud. Like the whole thing is going to be wah, 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 wah. It's going to be shaking, and it's just way too much. So what you do is the one tone that is most implied or is least necessary to be directly stated is the 5, the 5th. So you leave the 5th out. So you go from the root at the bottom, and then that top one doesn't have to be a 7, or doesn't have to be a root. That can be a 7. So you take a root at the bottom, you skip a string, you do a 7th on the next string, and then a 3rd on the string above that. And that's how you get a nice chord on a bass, where you're actually going either, if you're doing a minor version, and now we're talking in frets, it would be like 7, skip, 7, 7 for a minor, or you do 7, skip, 8, 8 for a major, because it's just moving that 3rd and that 7 up a fret or back a fret makes it either a fully major or fully minor. And same thing like we were doing before. If you were going to do the part way where you're doing a major 3rd with a minor 7, you do one way and one the other. But that's one of those things you just kind of mess around with and feel out on the bass. But with the bass, if you try to do that regular guitar chord, it's going to sound very muddy just because there's too much going on at the low end. You need that low note and then above.
What you choose to play on the high end, like you said earlier, can lead to your melodies. The last note in the whole chord tends to be where you want to dance the melody around.
And when she was talking about the one chord that she mentioned, it was a slash chord, was something over, I think it was over a B flat. But the idea was the chord before it had an A, and then it was going into a B flat and then going to a C. So it had that walking feel,
transitional,
because using that slash chord to give that walking bass feel to go moving, get the chord movement going. Yep.
the mid chord.
Yep. And so she keeps all that kind of stuff in mind when she's doing it, which is awesome. Slither says she plays violin with Steve Vai. Awesome.
Oh, really?
I'd be impressed. And then he said, I lied right there. And then he said, I lied right there, but that's okay.
She could.
I'm sure she could. Probably take her a week, maybe 2, to, put it all together. But again, approaching it in the way that she breaks down the key stuff, I wouldn't put it past her at all.
Well, and the beauty of like classically trained the way she is, you tend to, like she said, digest music very naturally, whether you hear it and figure it out or whether you see the instructions on a staff and say, oh, I know how to do that.
Mm-hmm. Now, one of the other videos that we had here was from, let's see, this is Venus Theory, and we had worked in a couple of his. You'll recognize him when we start the video. This one also related to hook theory and hook pad. Remember when we were dealing with hook pad and the suggesting of chords and all of that? Yeah. And one that I liked in this one.
Hook theory in general is like something you want to understand if you're going to be a songwriter, because the hook is a whole class in itself.
Mm-hmm. A hook can make a whole song, yeah.
Well, it's an important ingredient in a song. If you choose to make a song without a hook, that song may have a tough time being a commercial song, because commercial songs, the listeners want something they can pick up, grab, or relate to most of all. Mm-hmm. You can surprise them, and sometimes that's the hook. Yep. They hear something they didn't expect.
And even in those chord progressions that we were talking about earlier, you can be predictable, or you can get too predictable, I should say, and that's not good. Like if you get too predictable with the chord changes and you're not doing anything interesting, let's say you're not doing
it starts to sound lazy.
Chords, it starts to sound lazy, or it starts to sound too much the same, and that's where, like you're saying, either getting a hook in there or even just doing something to spin it around, like you go to a chorus or a bridge or something, and you're something to change it up. Can be just what it needs to get it out of, like getting a song out of a funk, essentially.
Recognize what the hook's purpose really is. Mm-hmm. Is it to build up to a different part? Is it to be super catchy and stick in your ear? Or is it to throw off the listener and make them realize they're not listening to this genre?
Mm-hmm. And that's the question. You got to decide exactly what your purpose is when you're going
Hook can have all those purposes.
Yep. And so this one is from Venus Theory, is the YouTube channel here. And as I said, you'll recognize when we started up here, we've done one of his before.
Today's episode of Morning Coffee with Cameron is brought to you in part by Hook Theory. Hook Theory not only has a bunch of great free resources, but some of my favorite affordable books to learn about music theory, songwriting, and composition. If you want to check it out for yourself, you can use my affiliate link down in the description below to help support the channel so I can make more videos like this one. Howdy doody buckaroonies, and welcome back to another episode of the Grumpstash Show. Have you ever been at a party where some asshole starts playing a piano or guitar so loud that the whole room can accidentally overhear them and fawn over their musical abilities? Well, boy oh boy, are you in for a treat, because today I wanted to share with you a really easy cinematic music theory concept that will not only make you sound like a musical savant, but allow you to gloriously bask in the dying glow of their spirit and will to live burning before your eyes. It's good stuff. In this video, we are going to be exploring the concept of parallel keys. It's really easy, and it's something that honestly, probably a lot of you already know, you just may not know it yet. You may have heard this referred to as parallel keys, parallel modulation, enharmonic keys, or enharmonic modulation, or something along those lines, and all of this is just a bunch of really scary music theory sounding stuff that means not a whole lot. All you need to know to understand this is your major scale and your minor scale. For the sake of keeping things simple, we'll stick to the key of C for most of this video. So, I'm sure we all know the C major scale. It's all the white notes from C to C. Now, the C minor scale is the same thing with the 3, 6, and 7 flattened. I'm sure you all know these already, and that's all you need to know to master this concept. Inside of every scale, there exist what are called diatonic chords. These are chords that can be built up of only the notes in that scale. So for the sake of argument, we're going to stick to just triads, or chords made up of only 3 notes. So in the key of C major, we have C major, we've got D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, B diminished, and back up to home bass, C. In the key of C minor, we have C minor, D diminished, E flat major, F minor, G minor, A flat major, B flat major, and back home to C minor. Now, what parallel keys are is basically just borrowing stuff from one or the other. So if we're in major, we can borrow some chords from minor. If we're in minor, we can borrow some chords from major and build these really cool sounding chord progressions. This is a really easy way to spice up your chord progressions because we're really just playing with colors here. We're not really doing all that much that's super fancy. And I think we all tend to get stuck in certain keys now and again. Like I've been really stuck in F sharp minor lately. I don't know why, it's just immensely satisfying. But instead of getting stuck playing, you know, the same stuff out of the same minor scale, this is a really easy trick to break away from that and make something really cool. Before we move forward here into some examples you can try, I just wanted to share this really quick, which is from Hook Theory, and it's absolutely free to access. You can go to Hook Theory, go to resources, and go to the key cheat sheets. Here I've got C major. It tells me all the notes in the C major scale and the most popular chords. I can then pull up the C minor scale.
I forgot to unmute myself while I'm talking about it. Just wanted to mention that that is big right here. This cheat sheet and the way they break it down. The fact that they've got the 20 most popular chords in the key listed out right there, and with the different colors so that you can see the flavors of the chords. It's got a list of all the songs that are in that key. It's got popular chord progressions in that key. I mean, just starting with this, as far as a songwriting resource, if you start with this page and work from there, you've just got a ton of stuff to work with. And this is for any of the chords. As far as this is talking about C major or C minor, it'll tell you everything related to that one, all the songs that are in that key. Just some really good stuff there. So I just wanted to, interrupt and give it that is an excellent resource on Hook Theory there.
Get the notes of the scale and the most popular chords of it. This way I could swap between the two and find which ones are more common and which chords I could swap out to try doing these parallel key changes. I really can't recommend Hook Theory enough because not only is this free to access, but if we go down to the bottom, they literally have this for every key and every mode. So it really makes it easy to start learning and experimenting with some new modes and ideas. And they even show the relative keys for whatever you're working in currently. So you can learn modulation between keys and all sorts of other crazy stuff, but maybe that's something we'll touch on more in a later video. All right, moving on to a couple practical examples of this that you can use. One of the most common ones I can think of is a major 4 to minor 4 to 1. This is extremely popular in pop music, country music, electronic music. I mean, really every genre of music has used this trick at some point. It's also really common in cinematic music. It sounds something like this. So we're like, waiting at the drive-thru at McDonald's. I'll take a number 5 with some fries. Can I have some apple pies? You're out of apple pies, oh no, you guys. So out of the key of C major, we've got the C major, the 4 being F major. So we could swap from the F major, F minor, that's from C minor, so this is parallel key, back to home. It's a really heart-melting transition that's used all over the place. Another extremely common example of this is the Picardy third. This is something that's used a lot in synthwave and in a ton of cinematic music. The Picardy third is when we end on a major 1 when we're playing out of a minor key. So let's say we're doing this in C minor again. Maybe we start on like the 6, 7, major 1, minor 3, 6, 1. So in synthwave terms, chugga 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 chugga. You get the idea. Super common thing, so play everything in minor and surprise everyone with a major 1 every now and again. Last but not least is one of my favorites here. This is the minor 5 to major 1. This is all over Hollywood stuff. Very cinematic, very dramatic, very superhero-y, very Marvel and things like that. It's just this epic transition. It's just one of my favorites to use for this kind of stuff. So in the key of C, we would be going from a G minor to the 1. Like, God, that just sounds so cool. It's very Jurassic Park, very Marvel, very things like that. So we could even do something fancier with it, like maybe we could do a G minor over D, drop down to something like that. We could even do a G minor over C and get this really funky kind of sus4 thing. Really epic sound and one of my favorites. Parallel keys work great for adding new chords to your progressions, but don't forget that the same concept applies to melodies as well, so you can borrow a note from your minor scale every once in a while just to spice up your melody lines. So let's say we're just chugalooging along at a C here, you could do something like this. And that's pretty neat. Parallel keys are a ton of fun and really easy to utilize. All you need to know is your major and your minor scale in the key, and you can just start borrowing stuff to make yourself sound awesome. So as one more example, let's hear this in action with something out of, I don't know, A. Pretty neat stuff. That wraps everything up with this video, so with that, the tools of Hollywood are in your hands, and I would love to hear what you can make with this trick. If you make something cool with this, feel free to share it with me on social media or the Discord. I always love to hear what you're out there creating and what you're up to. With that, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something, and as always, I hope this inspires you to get out there and make something awesome.
That's right. Get out there and make something awesome. He's got some great ideas with
Absolutely.
that stuff.
He just gave me a couple on a few of those tips. I like his suggestion of occasionally resolving on the major when you are in minor. That's a trick that I always like to utilize.
It's a good one for the tool belt. And also that little Marvel, yeah, like you said, the G minor to that C was like, ooh, yeah, I like that. Definitely a good sound with that one.
What was his name on YouTube?
Venus Theory.
Venus.
Like Venus like the planet. Venus Theory.
I know I'm following him already.
Yep. Exactly. We both are. There's a few that we had there. So I mean that's where we like to do things a little back and forth, like do some keyboard stuff, do some guitar stuff, do some songwriting stuff, some vocal stuff. We try to mix it up, match it up, see what people are interested in also. Like if people have specific topics that they'd like to know more about and they don't know where to look, by all means, let us know, and we'll see what we can find out for you.
What do you
we like
guys
to
wanna talk about?
spread it around and mix things, but we'd love to know what you guys want to talk about as well, and then we can find stuff specifically for that, because there's all kinds of stuff out there. Or we can just jam all night too. I mean, that's the other thing. We could do that anytime.
I think I got my keyboard back on. Am I coming through?
You do. Comes through great.
Awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, I had to kick my Mackie.
There you go.
This C music, I think, grabbed my mixer.
Exclusive control, sure.
Yeah, Zoom would not talk to it.
Mm-hmm. They've got to learn to play nice. I mean, can't they all just get along nicely?
Well,
it would be good.
You know the challenge of multiple audio devices between Zoom, Cakewalk, and other DAWs. We deal with that almost on a daily basis, trying to get those things to play nice, not just for us, but for others who are trying to hook their shit up.
Exactly. And I have an intermittent issue that I keep getting from a cable. One of my cables over here is giving me trouble where sometimes I go to get coffee and it like pulls something just the wrong way and my audio switches from what I'm using right now to sending down
have
the
heard it.
HDMI. You've heard it happen. And then it switches back when I come over and just touch it again. It's like, I don't like that. I need
Oh,
to figure out a better way to route my cables for that.
HDMI in itself can also be finicky. My TV that I have plugged into the computer to send the HDMI signal, every once in a while, like Windows disconnects from it, and the TV ends up resetting, and it's an HDMI dropout.
Yeah.
Maybe I think either my cable's too long or it's bad.
Like run over with the chair one too many times. For me, like that's not the issue with the HDMI because that's routed over there, but with my headsets, I've killed so many headsets by rolling over them with a chair. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. These tiny little cables with the 1/8" headset jacks. All you got to do is roll over it with the chair a couple of times, and crackles from now on.
I mean, I'm a big guy, so I mean, me rolling over it on like an office chair, those wheels, cables do not like that at all. And then I've broken some. I was telling you, just because being a creature of habit, I broke some where I seemed like I always get up and go to the left when I go to get my coffee because I would just constantly spin the cable more and more and more and more and more.
Yeah.
And it would never unwind. And I'm like, why is this cable always doing this? And I kind of took a look at why it was. And I'm always getting up and going to the left. And I'm just constantly spinning in that direction when I do my stuff. That's how much coffee I drink, enough to break cables from spinning to the left too much.
You know what I bought? These only cost me like $3 a piece.
Yeah. The spin fixers. Yeah.
Yeah. For $3, I got a bunch of them, and all my cables, like 20-foot, 30-foot extensions for the headphones.
Yeah.
All rolled up nice. And
there you go.
when you need it, it retracts. And when you don't, put it right back in.
For some of them, I've even seen where the cables were more flat, like rather than just being round or being bound together in like a figure eight, like that way, but they were like flat, like tape the whole way down. And it was just, I guess, the fattest part was in the middle, but then they were kind of tapered out to the edges. But
yeah, those cables that won't actually wind up.
Yeah, exactly.
Like monsters.
They're meant to lay flat so that they'll stay flat on the floor and stay out of your way, but they'll always get a bend in them somewhere where they're just going to be bouncing around like a snake.
Now,
anyway.
if I was in a studio and I had cables like that, those cables would get put under one of those rubber mats.
Yeah, exactly.
In the offices, because you don't want to damage the cable and you don't want to trip over it.
Yeah, for gigs, I mean, when we do live gigs, we have gaff tape,
especially on the stage.
I have
on the stage,
the one that's like a 4-inch wide gaff tape, so we can just take a whole bunch of cables, lay down as many as you want, but like put down 5-6 cables, whatever, and just kind of get this end down, hold them there, get that end down, hold them there, and just go put a
Yeah, and if there's a bunch of cables like that, like stepping on them isn't as big of a deal actually.
Yeah,
bigger the snake is.
Yeah, and ideally there's nobody stepping on them. Ideally they're being taped down just so that nobody hooks a foot on the way through. And we're only really doing that across areas where there's going to be foot traffic. But I mean, some of these places where we're setting up, we have the band is setting up like right in one of the the wait stations, like one of the spots where the waiters and waitresses have to get to the cash register over here, and they're going to be coming right from the dining room, like right through past the guitar player. Like every time they go past, like the guitar player is practically hitting them in the head with the guitar neck. So it's sometimes the rooms are tight. So trying to get things gaffed down or taped down, it's always, when you walk in, it's a whole new situation every time because, we can't even put the guitar player there. We can't even put the drummer there or whatever,
You hope that like people are considerate of the cables and don't just stomp on them.
Yeah.
Step over the cables, please.
We did have one gig that I remember showing you the video where the bass player was playing and one of the singers, was a male singer, was out front dancing in the front there and managed to step on just the wrong spot on it was Bones, the bass player, managed to step on the wrong spot on his bass rig and literally broke the cable, which is better than breaking the jack because he was able to just replace the cable and it was fine. But as soon as it happened, his bass just went out, like just stopped working. And he's got 35-40 pedals in that bass station. I mean, it's
and the whole
that
way
pedal rig is ridiculous. Yeah,
the whole way his rig is set up, like everything on the right side is the output. All it would take is somebody stepping on that output side, and many outputs could get bent.
Yep. And in that case, luckily it didn't permanently damage anything other than that one cable. So the one cable got kind of screwed, but he had a replacement that he was able to just put right in, and he was back up, before the next song started even again. So it was all good in terms of getting it back up. But that's how easy it is to just, step on the wrong thing the wrong way. And that's why it's important to give everybody their space. But a lot of these places were just crunched onto these, small areas that are being used as a stage. And that one happened to be an actual stage. So that was actually one of the better setups in terms of being able to set things up well. It's just still pretty tight in terms of overall space.
Yeah, no matter what, even with the digital cables we deal with now, which have different problems, you're always going to be dealing with analog cables. That's never going to go away in music.
Yeah.
And analog cables, you have to treat with respect.
And you got to have backups.
Otherwise, you get hums and clips and anomalies.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And we did switch. I was telling you before that he switched from the board that we had been using that had all the motorized faders on top. And now he's using one where it's more or less just a rack unit where everything just snaps into the rack unit, and he does the full control from the iPad itself. So whenever he's walking around the bar with the iPad, he's actually doing the live mixing from there. And there is no board to go back to actually hit faders if it came down to it, because it's all just in the rack. So it makes it a much more streamlined setup. Like we got into the one place last Saturday, and we were able to just drop in both of the stacks, like get in both subwoofers, the poles, and the mains on top. And we have the power amps like strapped to the one. And
now,
then we had
when you're
rack
routing all those speakers that are on the stage and all the signal that goes
That's all
to
the
the
monitors.
mixing board, those go through that snake, right? Like it's a digital signal going from the stage to the mixer.
Yeah, in this case, the way that we've been doing
analog.
The way we've been doing the monitors lately is it's all XLR to the monitors, going back
XLR.
to XLR from the monitors themselves back to the digital snake, which is just basically able to go from there to the board using only Cat6. So just one connection of Cat6 rather than
the digital
all the
snake is like rock solid, no analog interference between the stage to that mixing board out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
the analog cables on the stage, don't crunch them.
Yeah. I mean, any cables at all, don't crunch them. But that's one of those things you develop a respect for over time. But also with the way we pack cables, there's always like, certain ones like these XLRs in this box are, they need to be this small in order to fit in this box. So like these are the ones that are shorter ones that we use specifically for mics, because the mics don't have to go far to get to the, to get to the snake for that setup. But then there's ones in that box that are wrapped, this big, because that you need to be a little bit bigger in order to fit them all into the box. If they're all real small, they're not going to fit. So there's an art form to it.
You'd mentioned to me once that he didn't let you wrap the snakes until you learned. Or
that was a different guy, actually, different sound guy. But yes, that was the story. I went
to learn how to wrap the snake before they allowed you to.
It was more that I just kind of was offering my assistance because I had helped my buddy Mike so many times doing sound that I was helping somebody else. I'm like, I can help you just wrap some cables up at the end of the night, pulling cables. He could use the help. So I just started pulling some cables and wrapping them up. I go to pull the snake and he's like, do you know how to wrap a snake? And I just put it right back down. I'm like, okay, it's fine. I'll go wrap this one over here. And then he comes back 2 seconds later and he's like, do you want to know how to roll up the snake? And I'm like, sure. I mean, that's a better question. Let's do that. So he just wanted it to go one loop this way and then one loop that way and then one loop this way and then one loop that way. You're going back and forth with the loops rather than just coiling.
There's a strategy to it.
And part of that is so that as you're pulling it out of the box, you're not getting the entire thing out and having to unwind the whole thing. It's it's flopping. It's only pulling out as much as you need, essentially, as you're going.
My dad used to do that to me as a kid. I'd work on his construction sites, and at the end of the day, cleaning up, picking up some of the cables and the equipment, he'd be like, "No." And in some cases, he wouldn't even let me put the shit away.
Yep. And like Chris just mentioned there, don't roll them up around your hand and elbow. That's one that Mike hates. He doesn't want to see any of the cables where you're just going around.
Yeah,
from
because
your hand and your elbow like that.
It ends up tangling up anyway.
It can, sure. And that's the thing is certain things I will do that way, but it's if I'm doing a power cord, if we have a 50-foot, outdoor extension cable that I'm just wrapping up, because those things are solid anyway, no matter what you're doing.
With your arm, I mean,
it's a big roll,
it's gonna end up big.
And I'm not wrapping it super tight either. That's the other reason you don't do it. Is some people they would be literally cranking it down as they're going around. I'm just using the arm as a rough guide to get started on that. But yeah, for the XLRs, no, just make a little loop in the hand, and then it's all about the twist. It's all about the twist as you're wrapping, because you want to wrap this way. If the cable is giving you trouble, it doesn't want to go that way. Just a little twist this way or that way, and it'll go right exactly where you want it to go, because there's a certain twist to the cable that it'll make it go exactly where into that coil. Again, it's an art form that after you develop
Most
over time.
XLR cables, I mean, even the cheap ones, XLR cables are generally easier to deal with. Quarter-inch jacks and eighth-inch jack, especially those cables. XLRs, I love to deal with. They go very far.
Yep.
You can beat on them, especially if you have good ones, and they last forever.
Yeah, and Mike is an electrician. So when it comes to all of our XLR cables and all of our power extensions, like all of our quad boxes and dual boxes with the long power cables, like those are all hand wired by him. So like he, put all the stuff together. So if any of it fails, like he'll fix it all on the spot or fix it in general.
He's like my old sound engineer, Chuck. He would only make his own cables.
Yep.
I love the dude for that, like
Yep.
attitude and mentality. He didn't trust anybody else to make his cables.
And in this case, it was just he knows that cable works because he made that cable. He's like, yeah, yes, that works. And if it stops working, he can figure out why it stopped working and fix it, rather than just having something that's just a piece of crap that he got from wherever and, oh, now we need a new one, whatever.
It almost seemed to me like his cables sounded better than any of the ones we bought.
Yep, exactly. And, whether that's, the placebo effect where it just seems that way because he's so focused on it, or whether it's because, it's not mass produced and it's just, it had more care taken in when it was put together or what have you.
Have you ever noticed a difference in a mic with cheap or expensive XLR cables?
Oh, yeah.
Where a mic didn't sound as good with the cheaper cables? Because that seemed to be the case for me sometimes.
The thing was that it wasn't always the cheaper one that was worse, though. There are differences that I've
how
seen
they
that way,
were
but I've
built.
seen it both ways. I've seen it
How
both
they
ways.
were
I've
built.
seen where the expensive one is the one that sounded like crap, but in that case, I think it was just that the cable or that cable in particular had been
how they
stressed
were
already.
shielded. Like
It was already stressed.
How much
in-
shielding?
It was on the verge of breaking, and that's why it was not, working up to what I would expect it to be doing. But yeah, you do need to be careful with the cables. Try, always take care of the cables. Always have extras on hand. Always have more cables than you think you'll need, just because something will come up. And even if you just need one good thing is you can also do jumpers, where if you're a little bit short for an XLR run from here to there, you can always jump another XLR to it as long as you're not going too far on the overall length.
Think about the situation of that cable, because an analog cable in a studio where it's next to a computer and might get electrical noise needs a different kind of shielding than, say, an XLR on a stage where it's not next to a computer making certain kinds of noise.
Yep, it can make a big difference. And the
Hum
cables I use for
shielding
the
is
cables
why
I use
you
for the lights.
spend money.
The ones I use for the lights are they're the same connectors as XLR, so it's easy to mistake. These are called DMX cables for the lights. I'm pulling it into the frame, but it's not even getting there. There you go.
But they are
It's
based
basically the same
off of-
as.
the plug itself is
Yep.
based off XLR, right?
It is. You can plug them in. Like you can use it
has a little
interchangeably.
extra signal on one of those 3 pins.
The main thing with the lights is that it's not as well shielded. So if you try to use a DMX cable as an XLR cable, you'll probably get noise or interference on the mic, for example. But if you try to use an XLR cable for DMX, you should be fine. From what I've seen, just based on the cable itself, like the cable feels thinner. It doesn't feel like it's the same amount of shielding. But Chris is saying XLR are less prone to interference because they have the dedicated shield.
Yeah.
And there you
It's
go.
like a 3-prong plug versus a 2-pronger.
And the thing is that because of the fact that the DMX feels a little bit different also, like it doesn't feel the same as it feels thinner than the other XLR cables that we use. So whenever we're wrapping up at the end of the night, I only have 3 DMX cables and I always manage to get them back because they feel different enough where if somebody was wrapping it up, they'd be like, what is this? And they'd like put it down because it's too
That's
thin and
key.
it doesn't feel the same even. Yeah.
Yeah, that's key, like being able to tell the difference between a cable.
Yeah.
Some
other thing
of
is
the
that-
digital, do you ever see those coax, not coax, but it was like RCA plug digital cables. They were blue, or in the early days, they had like a yellow optical digital cable, but it looked like an RCA cable. So you get that mixed into the RCA pile. It's not an analog cable.
Yeah. And I've walked and seen like my my buddy who lives downstairs in an apartment downstairs has cable situations. Like he has cable boxes all over the place and people who want to hook up old video game things to old TVs and stuff. So there's always something that's trying to get hooked in somewhere where there's just no connector available. And it's like, yeah, we want to use this on this. And you just like, there's just, I mean, I could cobble together like 5 different connectors to get from that generation thing to that generation thing. But Like in this case, you don't necessarily want to do that because, you're going to, like you're saying, going through the wrong connectors. But in this case, he had one that looked like the RCA connectors, but it was like a ribbon cable that had maybe 7 of those together. So it was, the composites from a TV from way back when, or a monitor from way back when. And it was just like, I'm looking at this cable, like, that's what you're using back here for the RCA. I'm like, that's not the best choice. Like, there are better ways to do that. But the real digital coax is a fiber optic. There's the optical connector in the back, but that one you would know is different just based on the connector. Even beyond the cable being different, the connector is also way different.
Yeah,
So those you would definitely notice.
Those are easy to identify.
Right. He was talking about one that was a different, it looked more like an RCA, but it was carrying a video signal, or a digital video signal, I think it was. But it was just a different connector. But again, you can get them the wrong ones in the wrong pile. Was the main idea, is that if you get those in the wrong pile and you're trying to use that as an RCA cable, you're going to get different results than you would from the standard cables you're using. Not that you're trying to use RCA cables for this kind of stuff anyway, usually using XLR. But
RCA
that was the main start there.
I spent so much money on RCA cables for some of my keyboard equipment in the old days, and they became useless after like 2002 for a lot of situations. Same with the 1/4-inch cables. Now that I've moved all my synthesizers to virtual ones, I've got snakes of 1/4-inch cables for patch routing that are now sitting in the closet.
Yeah. And the only one place we really need those on stage is usually for people's instrument cables, but usually they have those covered themselves. Like, they usually have their instrument and their amp all set, and the only thing that we need to do is either mic their amp if they're doing it that way, or take a direct out if it's a bass player. You take a direct XLR out from their bass head for the signal out from there. Drummers, he goes around and he sets them up with usually at least 5, 6, 7 mics, depending on what he's doing for the day. But whether there's overheads or not, whether there's stuff in the splashes or not, whether they're just using the room, if the room's loud enough, he doesn't need to do all that. But he's usually got mics on each of the shells, though. So he's got a mic on the kick drum and the snare and all the toms, working the way around. So each of the hits he can work in how loud they should be, and if they need EQ to sound different in the room, all that kind of stuff. He can do each of them individually like that. So
that's the nice thing about
setup that way.
With drums, having more than just a couple of mics lets you adjust for the mix to get all the important parts of a drum.
Yep.
I'm a big subscriber of 5. If I always had the choice to mix drums and mic them, 5's my minimum. I can do it with 3, but 5's where you have enough flexibility.
Yeah. Even if it is like a kick snare, and then 2 of them are between the 3 toms, let's say, and then 1 for somewhere in the splash, or somewhere in the overhead area.
All the dynamics that you want to get from an acoustical drum set. And if they do add a bunch more shit, if it's Neil Peart, probably like 8 to 9.
You need a whole room for him.
Minimum.
He's crazy like that.
Well, now a room mic, if I could add 1 on top of the 5, it would be for a room mic to actually capture the whole thing from a part of the room where it can get the room dynamics.
Yeah. So you get that slapback delay, or get that little bit of reverb going on.
Yeah, that's
like
a track.
Recording in a stairwell or what?
That's a track you put under all the drum mics, and you just bring it in enough to bring the room into those tracks.
Indeed.
Without them dominating the drum track.
Yeah. This one is another one of the songwriting ones. It's talking about a particular emotion that you'll feel with a certain chord change. So this was another in the chord progressions that are good to know category. So we'll see here if this is.
And I was just thinking about this earlier, like the emotions I feel with a chord change.
Yep, and this is Ryan. Yep, Ryan Leach is the page here. And why you feel nostalgia for this angsty chord.
Lifestyle of the Rich and Famous?
Robin Leach. that was Robin Leach.
I wonder if they're related.
I have no idea. Let's see if they sound the same.
Radiohead, David Bowie,
Not really.
and Even Steven Universe use a simple technique with their chord progressions that make their music more impactful and emotional. The trick is to use chords that don't actually belong there. And in this video, I'm going to focus on one chord in particular that even the Beatles used in their first #1 hit in the US. I recently made a video about a book called Japanese Music Harmony, which is not as unrelated as it sounds, just bear with me. In the book, Kayano Chino lays out a theory for why Japanese anime and J-pop and video game music has a unique sound. The book is basically about how to mix and match different keys, and Kayano outlines 3 different categories for how to do that. Today, I'm going to focus on the first and simplest one, which is called relative multipolar tonality. But to show you that it's not just Japanese composers who do this, I'll be using examples from American and British pop music. Usually when you play a song, all your notes and chords come from a single key. So in C major, these are our notes. And these are the chords. Here's an example by the Postal Service of a song that uses only chords from the key of F major. Pay attention to the 3 chord here, because we'll be coming back to that. With relative multipolar tonality, you mix and match the chords from your relative major and minor keys, hence the name. Relative keys are the major and minor keys that share all the same notes. For example, C major and A minor, which both have no flats and no sharps. The exception, and this is the main point, is that in minor you can raise the 7th tone, called the leading tone, to lead more satisfyingly back to the tonic, or the home of the key. When you do this, you also change the 5th chord of the minor key from a minor chord to a major chord. So continuing with A minor, that would change the E minor to an E major. Technically, this is called the harmonic minor scale because of how it's used to control the harmony. But you'll find this 5 major chord being used in pretty much any flavor of minor fairly often. So in a normal major key, we're supposed to have a minor chord as the 3rd chord from our key, like in that Postal Service song, or like in this example from Aerosmith. But if we mix the chords from the relative major and minor keys, we end up with a 3 major chord instead. So here's Don't Look Back in Anger from Oasis, which uses the same chord progression, but a 3 major instead of a 3 minor. What ends up happening is that wrong note, that raised leading tone from the minor key, gives us this unexpected dissonance and this desire to pull forward into the next chord. In I Want to Hold Your Hand by the Beatles, the first 2 chords are the 1 and 5 from the major key. The second 2 chords are the 1 and major 5 from the relative minor key. That B major chord does not belong in the key of G major. And even if you know some more advanced music theory, this is not like a secondary dominant because the order of the chords is all wrong. This is a very clear example of relative multipolar tonality. The Beatles are using both the relative major and relative minor keys together. So we've seen that it's this wrong note that gives us the extra spice and yearning. Now I'll show you a few more examples that use that and take it up a level. This is beyond relative multipolar tonality, but I still think it's pretty cool. So if raising into this accidental gives us this feeling of lift and energy, lowering into that same accidental actually gives us the opposite effect. It ends up being more melancholy or nostalgic or even kind of depressing. In the song Creep by Radiohead, the first and third chords in the progression act like these stable tent poles. But the second chord here borrows from the relative minor, just like we've seen in the other examples. And the last chord goes in the opposite direction, lowering into that same wrong note and giving us the 4 minor chord from the parallel minor. In just 4 bars, we get that angsty lift upwards and that depressing descent downwards. The theme from Steven Universe uses the exact same chord progression. Space Oddity by David Bowie, which is probably one of my favorite songs ever, does this too. He even flips back and forth a few times between the 4 major and the 4 minor. So it keeps playing with that question of, is it happy or is it sad? Is it hopeful or hopeless? There is a lot more you can do with this, and if you want to go beyond using the same dull chords every time you write, you don't want to miss this video here, which will help make the chords you use more colorful and more interesting. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next.
Get back unmuted, get the video back here. There we go. Yeah, so that's another one of those that has just great ideas for using certain chords in certain situations. And whenever you're songwriting, it's just being able to pull certain tricks like that out can really make a big difference in the way your song comes around. Definitely ways to lift the mood, ways to change the mood, ways to make
Shift the mood.
Sad. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, whether you do a chord change strategically or even a pause sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
He brought up several good points about like controlling the listener's mood and purpose. Is it happy? Is it sad?
Mm-hmm.
That's dynamics in a song, just like swells.
Mm-hmm. And that's a big one that a lot of people don't realize is a lot of how you play, how much intensity with which you play can make such a difference in those swells as well. Like whether it's a swell emotionally, whether it's because it's getting louder and then softer, whether it's because it's going major and then sadder, happier and then sadder. All of those can be swells of emotion, swells of volume, swells of intensity, all these different things.
Vocals.
Mm-hmm.
Look at all the vocals we've been seeing, experimenting there, where they swell with their voice.
Yeah. Such good stuff.
And today's vocalist adds more tracks. In the old days, you'd have vocalists who'd be like laying down one track. A lot of these vocalists that are trying to do that with their singing, they layer their vocals.
Yeah.
I'm seeing amazing vocal arrangements these days.
It's common to see, 5 or 6 vocal tracks from even just one singer in a particular piece because they broke things out different ways, or they copied and split it, or did several takes and took the best ones, or tried to combine them all and split them by panning. A lot of different options there.
With the backing vocals, especially clipping them and maybe moving a backing vocal around for one layer and having a second backing vocal that's pushing up.
Exactly. Now, each of those different chord situations you were talking about there were one thing, but now the question is, how to solo over chord changes? Because that's one
I'm still trying to learn how to solo, period.
Yep. This can
Not
be
a
useful
good
for that,
soloist.
though, because this helps with soloing over chord changes, which is something that everyone's going to have to do, because not everything is going to be funk in E that you can just solo on all day, which is fun. Don't get me wrong. Love doing that.
Well, and being good
not
at
always
soloing is like being good at melody writing. If you're good at soloing, you're probably good at melody writing.
Now, this one is from Matt Johnson, Jamiroquai. So this is one that we've looked at some of his stuff from before about holding a funk clav groove and things of that nature. We had a few different videos we've checked out on his page
He's
before.
a Yamaha motif guy. I almost bought this keyboard.
Nice.
Hi there, so today we're going to be talking about navigating your way through chord changes as a soloist. This video is going to work for you, whether you're an absolute beginner. I'm going to teach you the scales that will help you get going as an improviser. Or if you're a more advanced player, I'm going to be talking about tactics and ideas, how to make your solos more interesting. Also, there's a version of this video for sale on my website. The link is below. You can watch it as many times as you like with no adverts, and it includes the backing tracks that I use in this video, plus some MIDI. So go and check that out if you want to study it deeply. All right, let's get cracking. So I'm essentially a blues player. All my playing is based around the blues scales, and then I frill it up a bit. So to show you the blues scale to start with, it's a great thing if you're just starting to solo, just learn this scale and straight away you can solo really on a very basic level. The blues scale is based around the pentatonic scale, and there's a minor pentatonic, which if we're in the key of C is this. And if we're in the major key is this. So to turn the minor pentatonic scale into a blues scale, all you do is add a flattened fifth, in this case a G flat. That's your minor blues scale. In a major key, you add a flattened third, which would be an E flat in the key of C. Those are your basic blues scales. Just practice it to start with in the easy keys, but then if you can, try to learn it in every key. You'll save yourself a load of hassle later on, honestly. I'm only telling you that because I didn't do that when I started playing. I got really good in the easy keys, but when it came to playing in A flat minor or E flat minor, I just couldn't really solo, and I had a barrier in my head. I just can't do it. But when I finally overcame that barrier, I realized, no, you can play in every key. You know, you just got to really learn that key, that's all. And if you do it all at the beginning, make life a lot easier for yourself, trust me, later on. Okay, so I've knocked up a little chord sequence here. Have a listen. Okay, so it's F minor 9, B flat 11, G minor 7, and like a C11. Same again, except the second time it alters on the C, which you get like a C7 with a raised fifth and a flattened ninth. So as a beginner, you might think, okay, so how am I going to solo over that? The first one is F minor, so B flat, G minor, C. You don't need to do that. You don't need to follow each chord. What you need to do is find the tonal center for the sequence. The tonal center is like the fundamental tone that runs through. Every piece of music has one. And the way to find it, a good way often is to think how you would end, how you would resolve that sequence. So if you were playing this song and you had to think of an ending, it's that satisfying end chord, and that's usually will give you the clue of what to play in. In this case, it's E flat or C minor, whichever, they're related. C minor is the relative minor of E flat. So I can play in E flat basically over these changes, or I can use the C minor blues scale that we've talked about. It's always going to sound okay if I play the blues in C minor over this sequence because the tonal center is E flat or C minor.
Ever wish that music came easily to you? That you could speak it naturally, as easily?
Basically just playing the blues scale there, really, and throwing in a few little frills. Now and again, I'm diverting from it and observing the chord changes, you know, so instead of always just playing the blues scale, you know, I'm just there going into a G minor 9, C altered, and then back to the blues. And as your knowledge of music increases, you'll be able to throw in more of these things. You know, you just learn them bit by bit and add them. So as I say, I start with a blues scale and just add, learn more little things that you can throw in that will make it more interesting than just playing the blues scale. But a great starting point, blues scale, and find the tonal center. Okay, so I've got a simple chord sequence here, A minor 9 and D minor 9. The tonal center in this case is the first chord, which is A minor. Obviously, you can never take that for granted, but it does feel like if you're going to resolve it, you'd go back to that A minor 9, so we know it's the tonal center. So I'm going to basically play an A minor, but what I'm going to do is imagine that there's another chord in there as well, because it could go. Imagining these chords that relate to the sequence can give you more things to play. So instead of just having these two chords to play with, I can add in this one, which is an E7 with like a flattened ninth and a raised fifth. It's like an altered chord, and it just gives me more vocabulary, even though it doesn't actually exist in the chord sequence. This is the way I sometimes think of it. Just gives you more to play with, you know. It's another little idea. Another thing is try not to think in terms of scales and chords sometimes if you can. Obviously, you've got to observe the key that you're playing in and the chords you're playing in. But if you can try and play ideas, you'll be a much more interesting soloist. You know, it doesn't have to be flash. You can just come up with great melody lines and you'll get people. And I think if you think in terms of melody, your solos will be more interesting, you know. Find a little melody. And then expand on it. It's the same as writing a song. You want to have a cool melody to listen to. I think for me, listening to a solo, the best ones are the ones that have, you know, great little lines that hook you in. I heard Greg Fillinganes talking about playing, I think it's Ruby Ruby, the solo. It's something like... something like that. And anyway, in his head was, I think it was, what was it? The Kinks. Hey, you really got me going. You got me da-da-da-da-da-da-da. That was what was in his head. The other thing is just extending the chords that are already there, you know, with your solo. So even though it's just A minor and D minor, that's where you're just adding these extra chords, making it feel a lot more complex and giving you more stuff to play with. Sometimes it's nice as well to be chordal with your solo. You know, you don't always have to be playing a lick. I really enjoy playing close clusters when I'm soloing sometimes. So I might start with a lead line. You know, so it's just kind of giving you another language, another color again. Because I think a lot of people, when you first get a solo and someone says, okay, play a solo, what you do, the first bar, you're like... And then it's like, oh, okay, now I've played everything I know. What am I going to do for the other 14 bars? So that's why, in a way, it's good to pace yourself when playing a solo. You know, I think it can really raise anticipation when it's your turn to solo, starts the beginning of the sequence, and you don't play anything for a bar. And then suddenly everyone's sort of looking at you like, oh, why is he not playing? You've got their attention, and then you can draw them in, you know, with very sparse, minimal beginning to your solo. So, like, if you're... again, let's do a different key. G minor.
Please welcome Kim Douglas.
Okay. So you want to look good in the summer, and here's one of my tricks. In the
So the group's vamping along. Just let it breathe. You know, so you're building, you're getting to a destination, you know, and when you get there, that's where you have to make sure you don't run out of steam, you know, so don't just burn off all your licks straight away. Climb up, build some anticipation, get some excitement going. Then you can, you know, once you're up there and it's burning, you could just be rhythmic for a while if we're playing a groove kind of tune, you know what I mean? That kind of vibe, you know, just really builds excitement. You know, you're not doing anything that's incredibly pyrotechnic in terms of licks or reharmonization or anything. You just build an excitement vibe, you know, making people feel like, yeah, come on, I'm into this. That's my approach to soloing. You get the excitement going, engage your audience, draw them in. And then whatever you're going to do, you know, just try to make it something that's going to capture them and lift them up, you know. Or if you're going to go weird, go weird. You know, let's go to another key, F minor. You could, you know, just take it. It might have been a very straightforward F minor to B flat. But then you can take it at left field when you start playing your solo. You know, you can take it wherever you want to take it. You just got to do it with confidence, you know, grab it by the throat and really go for it. Don't be wishy-washy, you know, have a vibe in your mind. Okay, I'm going to do this, you know. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to go guns blazing, you know, amazing licks. Yeah, of course there's always someone that can do it better. You know, I can try and do that and then I listen to Corey Henry and go, blimey, I can't do that. Doesn't matter, because I'm me, he's him, you know, and we've all got our own personality. With soloing, I think that's a lovely thing about it. You can find different ways to shine You know, look at Bill Evans, the piano player, one of my favorite piano players. He wasn't really an amazing monster player. He was very understated, but he had his own style that was unmistakable, and people loved him for it. Well, there you go.
Got to get faster to my unmute button. But yeah, very cool. And that was, again, Matt Johnson, Jamiroquai. Some awesome videos he's got there, covering all kinds of stuff for the keys. And just the groove on that man is ridiculous. I mean, just being able to sit there and just pull that kind of stuff out, just, you know, oh yeah, and F minor, just go like that. That's impressive to me. I love that. Always a plus in my book.
He brought up some good points about like soloing approach.
Yep.
And what kind of soloist do you want to be? Some do solo to show off their skills, and others are soloing to get it out, get a melody out in a lead, because that's what soloing really ends up being, is a lead, an instrument lead.
Yeah, and some are trying to just, you know, support the song and do what the song needs, and others are trying to have the song support the solo. And nothing wrong with either approach. It's just depends on what's the actual goal at the end of the day. Like, is the solo, you know, going to be part of the song? Is it all, you know, built on top of each other, meshed together, or is the song only there to carry the solo and just be something for the solo to ride on top of? You know, that kind of thing.
That's totally true. There's a difference between, say, soloing like blues all the way across the song on top of something versus that part in the song, you know, the metal approach. Like the solo in the metal 80s had a defined section of the song where the guitarist came out and did his guitar solo.
Yep.
Or drum solo.
Having distinct time for each, yeah. And the with Grateful Dead shows, they would have a whole section in the middle for drum space where, you know, everybody else would just leave and the two drummers would hang out on stage and do their thing for whatever, 20 minutes. And then everybody would come back and it would all form back together, you know, out of the, you know, mess essentially that it would turn into over time, just because they're just going completely all out on all the percussion pieces and drums and all that. Just, it's great. I mean, you know, being able to just go completely loose on that kind of thing and then kind of rein it all back together and have it all come back into a cohesive unit at the end. It's very cool the way that they always were able to pull that off.
And passing off instruments, like you've seen that with like the brass bands. It's either the Zombies, no, here come the Mummies.
The Mummies, there you go.
You know, like those strategic solos where it's like we have a full brass section, so the solo is actually going to jump from one sax to some, you know, trumpets to a different sax, and that dynamics of frisbee throwing the solo.
Absolutely. Now, one of the bands I worked with, I guess it was 2 weeks ago. It's a band we've worked with a number of times called Kickstart Charlie. They have a horn section in the band. There's 3 of them in the horn section. And what the band leader, the lead singer, also plays conga, also plays harmonica. He'll often pull the guys out, the horn section. He'll pull a chair out in the middle of the dance floor and bring the horn players over and have like the trumpet player get up on the chair and play a solo standing on the chair in the middle of the crowd. And the crowd just goes nuts for it. And then he comes down and then he sends the trombone player up there and he'll go up there and he'll play, you know, for a little solo, and then he'll come down and then the sax player goes up. So he'll have, you know, he'll be showing off the horn section like that, which is great. I love seeing that. The fact that they're, you know, not only that they have the players who can do that kind of stuff and pull it off great, but the fact that, you know, as a band, they're all on board with that and you know, making that happen for everybody is great. It's a very cool sound. And the crowd, like I said, the crowd just really eats that up.
Oh, and they're so lucky to have all those members. You know, big bands, it's tough getting 4 or 5 musicians together, but
yeah, this was they were playing with 8 pieces that night, so it was, you know, the 3-piece horn section and then, you know, the whole rest of the band, you know, filling out to a full 8 pieces. And I think we've seen them as high as 10 or 11. I think that was when they had some guest horns in on that day and some singers that were only there to sing on that particular day.
Well, the beauty, once you have some horn players, they probably know others, like, you know, from the high school bands, and to get one horn player is to get maybe 5 or 6 once in a
when
while.
You need the horn section, sure.
Yeah.
Gotta love that. And that's the thing is, to me, the horns always seemed more limited or limiting, I suppose, as opposed to the keys or the guitar or the bass even. Like each of those have their place.
You have to tune. You have to tune to horns. I mean, they don't tune themselves in some cases, like a sax, B flat major.
That'd be my
Most of
guess.
the
Concert
saxes,
key,
yeah.
yeah. And that's one of those things also that without, if you're not a horn player, like you might not realize that. Like same thing with harmonicas. You might not realize that most of the harmonicas that you would see somebody playing, that like that's an E harmonica or that's a B harmonica or that's a G harmonica. Like it's not just a harmonica. Like there's a piano, like that's a piano. You know, you don't need a piano in the key of G. You have just a piano. It's in the key of C. But you know, when you get to these other instruments, it is specifically in that key. So there are only so many notes you can get to. It's something like a bugle,
or
for
if you
example.
start tuning to frequencies. Like the whole problem I ran into with saxophones was I had a analog saxophone player who needed me to tune to B flat in 440, and what I had was in 432, so I could shift it down, but it was still, you know,
Wasn't exactly the right amount
6
shifted.
hertz, 6 hertz off from what he wanted.
Yeah, so you got to dial it in real close. Yeah.
Well, I redid the track. You know, at that point I was like, okay, 4 or 5 hours, I can remix this at 440 and calibrate to B flat, transpose it.
Yeah. Good plan. Now we had another one for the guitar players here, and this one was back to Stitch Method. We remember Stitch from numerous videos that we've done from him as well. Let me just bring that up over here real quick. This one is on, it's also about the pentatonics, but it's about blues soloing over the pentatonics. And this is one that also should help, you know, get ideas kicked off, get things started, all that kind of thing. Can definitely help with that stuff.
Creative Kindle.
Creative Kindle, there's a good term. I like that. And
It's
again,
the
this
shit
is
that gets shit started.
Stitch Method Guitar is the webpage, and just fantastic ones there. Again, the one I always go back to is the In the Mind of Jerry Garcia masterclass that he has there that just has fantastic stuff on getting into the mind of jam band soloing stuff and that kind of thing. So let's see what we have here.
Using a pentatonic. Now, this is the #1 mistake or #1 miss that I've seen in all my students who come to me. And I'm not making fun of them. It's just they learn off of YouTube, really. Okay, that's the end of the video. Just kidding. There's a lot of broken information on the web, and I'm sure you find that a lot. And I'm asking you to trust me, and we'll see how it goes. So using a pentatonic, there are rules to doing it. And I have these huge pet peeves when people come in, like, oh, I know my pentatonics, and they play them incorrectly. Now, you're probably looking to better your guitar soloing or just understand how this works. So let's just talk about a pentatonic first. A pentatonic, pentatonic, you know this, 5 notes, okay? So if I have, this goes back to an old college class, which I'm dating myself and rambling, but it's the sock drawer, riddle, which is if you have 5 pairs of socks, how many times do you need to reach into the drawer to get a pair? And the answer is 6 times. You can figure that out later. It's a riddle. Figure out later. Anyway, the point being is if you play a pentatonic scale from the beginning, you have the first note, second note, third note, fourth note, fifth note, and that 6th note. You come back to the beginning. That's the whole point of that riddle. Disregard that. Okay. But that's very, very important. So what we're going to do is we're not going to use the standard Form 1 pentatonic. We're actually going to use the Form 3, which, by the way, Trey Anastasio from Fish, it's one of his favorite forms. It really is. And we can discuss that later. And here is why. Now, first of all, why I have a pet peeve. So let's just talk about a Form 3 pentatonic first off. We're going to do it in the key of E, or E minor for a blues progression right now. So E minor pentatonic. It's going to be the 5th fret, 5, 7, and then 5, 7, then 5, 7. Then we take a step back, 4, 7, then come forward on the B string, 5, 8, and then 5, 7. So you have... Now here's the problem. Everybody's like, oh, I understand that form, and they come soloing like in an E, right? And they come out like this. They go... Wrong. The most important thing to realize in music, and for fans of Fish and the Grateful Dead especially, is what the concept of home is. And home, for all of you Fish and Grateful Dead fans, are the moments where the crowd goes, yeah. And we've all been there, all right? So coming home means landing on the note of the chord that is being played. So if I'm in the E blues, you want to land on the E. And why is that important? Well, because this scale shape has a couple of E's in it. So let's discuss where they are. So you have 5, 7, 5, 7. There's one, that's an E. So you don't want to start your pentatonic on the lowest note, which our brains naturally want to go to, like, oh, this is where it starts. It doesn't start here. This is actually just the 5 notes over and over again, and it's where the cookies crumble. This note is home. So you have 5, 7, 5, 7. That is your 1. You keep going through the scale, and there's your other 1. And it's very important, okay, because when you're soloing, I'm going to date myself. We're going to talk about The Wizard of Oz. There is no place like home. So what you want to do is you really want to focus when you're in this pentatonic here. You want to focus your riffs, and you actually want to place your first finger on the 1, because no matter what, a 1 always sounds good, even when the band is on the 4 chord, the 5 chord, or in any other song where the 1 is the root note. So when you're soloing, you don't want to come off on these low notes or these high notes. You want to come off on the 1.
As long as you know what 1 is in your song.
You come home to the 1. And there's the 1 there. It will always sound good. And the reason when you use this is sometimes me, you, everyone, we're soloing and our fingers are just going, and all of a sudden the moment comes where you want to resolve and you have no idea what to do. So you just go, oh, I hope for the best. But don't do that. Aim for the 1. So if you're soloing, the resolve will always be on the 1. And that is very,
Get on the 1.
very important. So learn the shape. All those other notes have very important things to do, but the concept right now is coming home to the 1 and the 1. These are both E's in the key of E. That's where we are. So right now, all my backing tracks are actually launched off my phone, which is charging because it's dead. So I'm going to cut here, come back, and play a little guitar solo on E blues, focusing on the home. I just had a really awesome dinner. All right, bye-bye. And we're back, and my phone is charged. And there's an E blues backing track going. Surprise. All right, so what we're going to do here is very, very simple. We're going to use that form 3 pentatonic and land on the 1, just like that. Now, I'm going to be a little aggressive and be like, 1 when I hit it, so you can understand. So remember where those positions are. It's the 7th fret of the A string or the 5th fret of the B string. 1. Back to the 1. 1. There's the 1. I'm going to shut up, and now here we go. Pointing it out. So now I'm just kind of breathing and taking my time on this, but if you're ripping, it always works. Now, am I overdoing it? Yeah, because I'm trying to give you an example. But remember, this is kind of like the Wizard of Oz treatment. There is no place like home. So you gotta learn where your 1 is. You have to. If not, you're gonna be lost. And my job is to have you not be lost. I was gonna say set you free, but you can kind of be lost. But you wanna be here, on the 1. enough. You get the point, all right? Focus on the form 3 pentatonic. Know where your ones are, all right? And really load up an E-blues backing track and phrase, breathe, say something with a little bit of rhythm and end on the 1. All right, so I hope this helped you out a little bit. As always, please subscribe, ask the questions. As the questions come in, I will answer them. And more importantly, ask the questions that you've already hunted on YouTube. Like, let's have a little, trial. I promise you, what you think you know, and I'm not trying to sound rude, it's probably a little piece of something that somebody knows, and we don't know how to put it into the whole entire macrocosm of guitar. So for all you jam band lovers and improvisers out there, please, let's form a dialogue and have a good day. I'll play myself out.
Always a pleasure. And I do believe that we have some electronic music coming right up.
Oh, yeah, Soul looks like he's ready to go.
Excellent. So we'll get wrapped up here. It's always a pleasure to have everybody come in for Talking Shhh I.T with Glenn and Tony on a Thursday night. And right after this, we're going to cut the stream. We'll come right back with Electronic Thursdays with Soulmake in just a few minutes. But always a pleasure to see you guys, and we'll be hanging out here, checking in the chat for everybody here, and we will see you guys next time. Thanks very much, guys.
Yeah, awesome stuff, Glenn.
Always a pleasure. Always great to find these guys.